Ellie stood at the gate of Westbrook Academy, her fingers clutching the strap of her backpack a little too tightly. Her figure was small, almost fragile, and her pale face was framed by a perfectly styled wig, one that slightly shifted whenever the wind picked up. Her wide eyes scanned the courtyard, taking in the polished uniforms, the glossy phones, the laughter that floated through the air like perfume. This was nothing like her old school, but that was the point. Her parents had moved her here for a new start. No one at Westbrook knew, not yet. She walked quietly, head slightly lowered, and avoided eye contact as she passed clusters of students. Her shoes were too clean, her uniform too crisp, and the way she held herself, like she was afraid to breathe too loud, made her stand out even as she tried so hard to disappear. In the hallway, she found her locker with the help of a printed-out map. She fiddled with the combination lock, hoping not to draw attention. That hope was shattered by a sudden voice behind her. "Well, well, who do we have here?" said a tall blonde girl, leaning against the locker next to hers. Her name was Lexi, and in this school, that meant something. Captain of the cheer team, daughter of some tech CEO, and feared more than any teacher. Ellie turned slightly, managing a polite smile. "I'm new, just trying to find my class." Lexi's eyes scanned Ellie's head, then narrowed ever so slightly. "Cute hair. Is it like a fashion choice?" Behind her, two other girls stifled laughter. Ellie blinked, thrown off. She touched her wig instinctively, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Lexi didn't push further, not yet. She just smirked and walked away, but her voice carried down the hall as she said to her friends, "That girl's got secrets. I can smell them." Ellie stood still for a moment longer, before opening her locker with trembling hands. It was just a comment, just words, but it had already begun. Lunchtime was no easier. The cafeteria was bright, loud, filled with cliques that knew exactly where they belonged. Ellie hovered by the entrance, tray in hand, unsure where to sit. She finally spotted an empty corner table, and made her way there quickly, head down, avoiding stares. But not all eyes missed her. In the far corner of the room, near the vending machines, sat a black girl with long braids, a hoodie pulled over her head, despite school policy, and earphones tucked in but not playing anything. Her name was Naya. Most students didn't even know it. Naya watched everything. She had seen Ellie in the hallway. She had seen Lexi's smile, the kind that meant something was coming. And now she saw Ellie sitting alone, stirring her mashed potatoes but not eating. Lexi entered the cafeteria moments later, her squad trailing behind like perfume. She didn't glance at Ellie, not yet, but she walked past her table on purpose, slowing just enough to say under her breath, "Enjoying your mystery meat wig, girl." The comment was low enough to be deniable, but Ellie heard it. So did Naya. Again, she said nothing, but she saw everything. Later that day, as Ellie walked out of the library, she caught a reflection of herself in the glass door. Her wig had shifted slightly, revealing the pale line of her scalp beneath. Her hand shot up in panic, adjusting it quickly. Her heart pounded as she glanced around. A group of girls across the courtyard were laughing. She didn't know if it was at her, but the doubt was enough. She turned a corner trying to breathe. She didn't cry. Not yet. From across the yard, Naya leaned against the wall, pretending to scroll her phone. Her eyes never left Ellie. Lunch on Friday was louder than usual. The cafeteria buzzed with end-of-week energy. Kids making weekend plans, laughing too loudly, tossing empty milk cartons across tables. Ellie sat in her usual corner, her tray untouched again. She had tried to blend in all week, but whispers always seemed to follow her, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Today felt different. Heavier. She was reading, or pretending to, when she noticed Lexi and her group approaching. Ellie's stomach clenched. She didn't look up, hoping they would just walk by. They didn't. Lexi stopped right beside her table. Her tone was sweet, fake, almost kind. "Hey Ellie. Mind if we sit?" Ellie looked up, confused. Lexi never asked for anything, but before she could answer, Lexi reached out, and in one swift motion, snatched the wig off Ellie's head. The silence that followed was instant and brutal. Gasps. Laughter. Then phones. So many phones. lifted in unison like a firing squad. The glow of TikTok recording screens reflected in a dozen eyes. Ellie froze. Her bare scalp gleamed under the cafeteria lights. There was no hiding now. Her illness, her fear, everything she had tried to keep private was ripped into the open in front of 100 students, and the worst part was, they laughed. Not all of them. Some just watched. Some stared, unsure what to do. But none stood up. Lexi held the wig like a trophy, waving it gently as if it were a joke prop. "You forgot your hat. Cancer, Barbie." More laughter. Ellie couldn't breathe. The pressure in her chest rose until it felt like drowning. She grabbed the wig from Lexi's hand, or tried to, but Lexi tossed it behind her, out of reach. Ellie spun, found it near a trash bin, snatched it up and ran. The doors slammed behind her as she bolted down the hall. She didn't care where she went, only that no one could see her. The bathroom was dark and cold. She locked herself in a stall, curled up on the floor, and wept. Naya had watched everything from her usual spot in the back. She didn't flinch when the wig came off. She didn't laugh. She didn't move. She just watched. And then, slowly, she stood up and left the cafeteria without a word. The video was online within minutes. It was edited with sparkly captions and laughing emojis. One account even added music. The views climbed quickly. Hundreds. Then thousands. Teachers were notified. Of course. The principal called Lexi into her office. There was a brief conversation, a warning. Maybe a note in her file. Nothing more. Lexi's father was a major donor. The school's new science wing bore his name. They weren't going to risk upsetting that over a wig joke. That's how the staff saw it. An unfortunate prank. Kids being kids. When Ellie returned to school the next Monday, her eyes were swollen. She wore a scarf, now tightly wrapped, no longer trying to fake it. Whispers followed her through every hallway. Cancer girl, TikTok girl. She sat in class and stared at the board without really seeing it. At lunch, she didn't even go to the cafeteria. She sat outside near the loading dock, alone with her sandwich in silence. Naya saw her, every time. She hadn't said a word to Ellie yet, hadn't made eye contact, hadn't offered help. To the world, it looked like she didn't care. Just another quiet student who kept her head down. But Naya wasn't ignoring. She was waiting, watching. And something in her eyes had changed. Ellie didn't come to school the next day. Her seat in homeroom was empty, her name unspoken. No one asked where she was, or if they did, it was only to speculate. Maybe she transferred, maybe she shaved her head, maybe she cried herself into the hospital. The rumors floated like dust, but someone noticed. Naya sat 2 rows behind Ellie's empty desk, staring forward with her hands still. Her usual stillness hadn't changed, but behind her eyes, something sharp had awakened. After lunch, while most students scattered to the gym or the courtyard, Naya headed somewhere else. She walked quietly down the east wing hallway, where the older computer lab sat mostly unused. The lights buzzed softly. The room was empty, dusty, a forgotten space filled with outdated monitors, but Naya preferred old spaces. They didn't track you the same way. She booted up the central station. Within seconds she bypassed the login wall. No one really paid attention to school cybersecurity, not when the students were more focused on brunch and lacrosse scholarships. Naya's fingers moved with purpose. She opened browser windows, connected to anonymizers, launched multiple tabs. Then she began the real work. She had watched Lexi and her clique for months, not because she cared about their fashion or popularity, but because of the patterns. The same girls, the same victims. Whisper campaigns, screenshots taken and edited, inside jokes posted publicly to humiliate. The cruelty was precise, even rehearsed. Now Naya scrolled through Lexi's public TikTok history, not the visible stuff, that was polished. She looked deeper, the tagged content, the private comment chains that leaked. She followed trails, dug into hashtags, identified accounts that had once posted and been deleted. She found 3 other girls who had left school unexpectedly in the last 2 years. One had moved, one transferred to online learning, One had simply vanished from the yearbook with no explanation. Naya created a burner profile, then another, and another. Each one had a name, a face created through AI rendering, just real enough to pass. She began posting screenshots, out-of-context messages, clips from TikToks, paired with subtle commentary. Not revenge. Not yet. Just questions. Why did 3 girls disappear after Lexi made videos about them? Is it just a coincidence? Screenshots don't lie. Tagging major student pages, commenting on school community groups, adding just enough drama to make it spread. By the end of the day, whispers had returned, but not about Ellie. Now the talk was about Lexi. She walked into her math class with less of a strut. Her friends were quieter too, checking their phones more often. Lexi tried to laugh it off. People are just jealous, she muttered once, but it sounded less confident than usual. In the next few days, the tension built. An anonymous account started posting daily drops, carefully edited videos, comparing past TikToks of Lexi to stories from former students. One post showed a girl crying in a bathroom, blurred out, with the caption, "Guess who filmed this?" It wasn't direct, but it didn't need to be. The students started connecting dots, group chats filled with theories. Even a few teachers started asking questions. Lexi grew more irritable. She tried confronting people, accused 2 juniors of running the account. She reported it to the school admin, but they dismissed it. "We can't police rumors, Miss Harper." For once Lexi felt what it was like to be helpless in a system that wouldn't protect her. Naya watched it all unfold quietly. She never posted from her phone. She never saved anything. Everything was done from isolated terminals and auto-deleting scripts. Her fingerprints were wiped clean every time. She wasn't looking for applause. This wasn't a performance. It was a correction. And it had only just begun. Ellie didn't know where it came from. The first message was a simple comment under a random post she'd made months ago saying, "You are stronger than they'll ever be." Then came more. Dozens. Then hundreds. DMs. Tags. Anonymous notes on community boards. Messages from students she didn't even know. Some were from people at school. Some from former classmates. Some from complete strangers. They said things like, "I saw what happened. I'm sorry I left that school last year because of the same group. You are not alone." The support felt unreal. Ellie stayed home, still too ashamed to face the hallways again. But slowly, something inside her began to shift. She didn't know who was behind it all, but someone was fighting for her. Meanwhile, Naya had already begun her second phase. She submitted a proposal to the school board for the upcoming innovation fair. Every spring, the school held a startup competition, mostly so wealthy students could pitch shallow business ideas their parents helped design. But Naya's submission was different. Her project was called Echo Room, a platform where students could share experiences of bullying anonymously, where they could find support, resources, legal info, even therapists. A digital safe house, moderated, protected, invisible to the casual browser but open to those who needed it. The school approved it quickly, too eager to showcase diversity and digital innovation to notice the deeper implications. But Naya had one more step to take. She created a new anonymous account. This time she sent a private message to Ellie. "We're launching a project at the school fair. It's about giving voice to people who were silenced. We want you to be the face of it. You don't need to speak. Just stand for it. If you can." Ellie stared at the message for hours. Her first instinct was no. She wanted to stay invisible. Safe. She wasn't brave. Or at least that's what she told herself. But something in her heart burned. That day in the cafeteria had broken her. But these past days had begun to rebuild her. She wrote back one word. Yes. On the day of the fair, the gym was filled with glossy booths, digital billboards, posters. Students in dress shirts rehearsing their pitches. Naya's booth was different. Minimal. A single screen on a dark stand. No decoration. No gimmicks. Just the logo. Echo Room. Students approached slowly. The screen lit up with quiet messages, typed real-time thoughts from victims of bullying. They appeared and faded like whispers. One read, "I stopped eating lunch after she filmed me and called me a pig." Another, "No one believed me when I said he touched me." The silence around the booth was heavy. No laughter, no selfies, just truth. Then Ellie walked in. Her steps were careful but steady. She wore no wig. Her head was bare, showing the soft fuzz of new growth, a symbol of everything she had endured, and everything she was becoming. She stood next to the booth, said nothing, just stood. People stopped. More gathered. Whispers turned to stunned silence. Even teachers came by. Some recognized her instantly. Some blinked twice, unsure. Lexi walked in 5 minutes later, and froze. She stared at Ellie, then at the booth. Her cheeks flushed. For the first time, Lexi looked small. Ellie glanced at her, then looked away. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for herself, for the others, for anyone who had ever been laughed at, mocked, erased. She didn't need to speak. Her presence said everything. That night, Echo Room went viral. Not because of ads, not because of influencers. Because a photo was posted. Ellie standing under the screen, head held high, with the caption, "The quietest girls sometimes have the loudest courage," and the world listened. The storm didn't pass, it only grew stronger. By Monday morning, the photo of Ellie standing bareheaded at the Echo Room booth had been reposted thousands of times. News outlets picked it up. A few influencers spoke about it, then more followed. Hashtags emerged. The Stand with Ellie, Echo Room Voices, to Not Just Hair. But it wasn't just sympathy. People began asking questions. Who were the ones laughing in the background of that viral cafeteria video? Who posted the original clip on TikTok? Within hours, internet sleuths had answers. Screenshots surfaced. Comments. Old videos. It wasn't just Lexi. It was a pattern. Different targets. Different humiliations. One by one, names were attached to faces. Lexi, Jenna, Brooke. All of them had cultivated polished social media personas. Perfect outfits. Charity work. Internship announcements. But now, those feeds were flooded with angry comments. Brands they collaborated with quickly issued statements. "We do not tolerate bullying." Sponsorships were revoked. Contracts ended. One even sued Lexi's family for reputational damage. Then came the school's turn. Under pressure from parents, media, and even board donors, the administration held a public meeting. Their tone had changed. The headmaster stood before cameras and said, "We deeply regret our failure to protect our students." Effective immediately, the individuals involved are suspended. Investigations into prior incidents have been reopened. Lexi's academic record, once spotless, was now under review. Her scholarship, funded by a tech company that had once praised her leadership, was revoked. She showed up to school only once that week, wearing sunglasses, surrounded by tension. No one talked to her. No one sat with her. The power she once held had vanished. Meanwhile, Echo Room had become the talk of the town. Other schools requested access. A district-wide version was being discussed. Alumni reached out offering funding. Ellie, though still shy, had begun to find her voice. When the final day of the innovation fair came, judges announced the winners on stage. Second place went to a sleek crypto app. Third place, a drone project. But first place, Echo Room. Naya walked up first, modest as ever. But then she turned and gestured toward the side of the stage. Ellie stepped forward. There was a collective inhale. Some students clapped. Then more, and more. By the time she reached the microphone, the whole auditorium was standing. She hesitated, looked out at the sea of faces, the same ones who had once looked away. Her voice trembled at first. "I never wanted to be noticed. I just wanted to be safe. I thought if I stayed quiet, I could survive here." She paused. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't protect you. It only helps them. A few in the crowd were already crying. I didn't create Echo Room, but it gave me something I didn't know I needed. Proof that I wasn't the only one. She looked over at Naya, who gave her a tiny nod. So if there's anyone out there who feels like hiding, don't. Because maybe your story is the one that could save someone else's life. Applause thundered. For a long time it didn't stop. Ellie stepped back, tears in her eyes, not of pain this time, but of pride. And behind the curtain, away from the spotlight, Naya allowed herself a rare smile. She hadn't needed recognition. She'd needed justice. And now, finally it had arrived. It wasn't until days after the competition that Ellie learned the full truth. She had returned to her quiet rhythm, walking the halls with less fear, but still unsure where she stood in the new ecosystem that had formed. People smiled at her now. Some apologized. Most just nodded, not knowing what to say. She appreciated the kindness. But there was one person she needed to find. She waited outside the tech lab after school. The room was dimly lit, filled with screens and glowing wires. Naya sat at the back, her fingers dancing across a keyboard, headphones on, focused, distant. Ellie hesitated, then knocked softly on the glass. Naya looked up. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. She simply nodded toward an empty chair beside her. They sat in silence for a while. Ellie watched the code flow across the screen, lines and loops that made no sense to her but seemed to calm Naya. Finally Ellie spoke. "It was you, wasn't it?" Naya didn't answer immediately. Then she nodded. Ellie's voice cracked. "Why? You didn't even know me." Naya leaned back in her chair. "I didn't have to," she said. She turned off the monitor. The room suddenly darker. Her tone shifted. Low, steady, and honest. "I used to be you. A different school. A different city. But the same silence." Ellie listened closely. "My sister Lila," she continued, "was brighter than me." She spoke up. She fought back. They hated her for it. Said she was loud. Said she was trouble. Naya's eyes didn't water, but her voice grew rough. They made her life hell. And one day, she didn't come home. Ellie froze. "I thought it was my fault," Naya whispered. "Because I didn't defend her. I stayed quiet. Like I always do. I thought if I just stayed out of the way, I could survive." She looked straight at Ellie now. "But surviving isn't living." Ellie felt her breath catch. "Echo Room wasn't just a project," Naya said. "It was a promise. That no one would ever feel as alone as she did. As I did." The silence between them this time wasn't awkward. It was full. Then Ellie asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" Naya shrugged. "Didn't need to. It was never about credit." Ellie smiled. "Small and fragile. You should take it anyway." Naya tilted her head. "So should you." They sat for a while longer. No words necessary. Two girls. One who had almost disappeared, and one who had chosen to disappear, now quietly sharing the same space, the same pain, and maybe, slowly, the same purpose. When Ellie finally stood to leave, she turned back. "Thank you, Naya, for everything." Naya nodded again, but this time, she added, "Thank you for not staying quiet." Months passed. The seasons shifted. The trees that once stood bare outside the school now swayed with new leaves. Something else had changed too. Something deeper than the weather. The hallways of the once toxic campus echoed with new energy. Less fear, more awareness. Echo Room, the anonymous support platform for bullying victims, had quietly spread across the state. Now it operated in hundreds of schools. Testimonies poured in daily. Not just from students, but teachers, even parents. Some shared painful memories. Others offered solidarity, but all of them had one thing in common. They were finally being heard. And at the center of it all was Ellie. Her hair had started to grow back. Soft tufts curled behind her ears now, uneven but real. She no longer wore a wig. Not out of defiance, but freedom. Her gait was different too. She walked like someone who had tasted despair, and decided never to swallow it again. She had learned that healing wasn't instant, but it was possible. Naya remained in the background, just as before. She avoided the spotlight, skipped interviews, and stayed off social media. Most people still didn't know who built Echo Room, and that was exactly how she wanted it. But Ellie had other plans. The school was hosting its annual Impact Forum, an event where students presented projects that had made a difference. The auditorium was packed. Rows of proud parents, distracted teens, skeptical teachers. Ellie stood backstage, rehearsing her speech for the 10th time, heart pounding. Then she turned and looked at Naya. "Come with me," she said. Naya blinked. "No thanks," she muttered. But Ellie wasn't asking. She smiled. "You're the reason this exists. You deserve to be there." Naya hesitated. Then without a word, she followed. As Ellie walked on stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Many recognized her. Few had forgotten what happened in the cafeteria. But this wasn't about pity anymore. This was respect. Ellie began to speak. Her voice clear, strong. She talked about silence, about fear, about the cruelty that hides behind popularity, and the kindness that hides behind quietness. And then midway through her speech, she turned to the side and gestured. "This," she said, "is Naya, the real architect behind Echo Room. The reason I'm standing here today." The applause this time was different. Not loud, but long, warm, genuine. Naya stepped forward, awkward in the spotlight, hands in her pockets. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough. The two stood side by side, neither dominant, neither diminished, just equal. Later, as they walked off the stage, Ellie looked at her and whispered, "Still think silence is better." Naya smirked. "Sometimes," and in that final moment, as the lights dimmed and the screen faded, the narrator's voice broke the silence one last time. "Not every battle needs a voice. Sometimes silence is stronger than the scream."